Welcome, familia. This is Ray Collazo. You're watching and listening to The Collazo Show. The Collazo Show provides analysis and commentary at the intersection of leadership, politics, and cultura. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe to The Collazo Show on our Substack page. That's where we premiere this edition of The Collazo Show. Every edition of The Collazo Show on video, you see first on Substack. Please follow us on Substack. You also can catch on video all of our episodes on our YouTube page at The Collazo Show. That's at The Collazo Show. If you're a personal friend of mine, you can see it on Facebook too. But we really need you, and we appreciate those Facebook followers for sure. But definitely encourage you to subscribe to our Substack page. We're building up our Substack community, so that gives us a forum to engage and create more dialogue, create more content, connect with each other. So definitely we encourage you to follow The Collazo Show on Substack, wherever you find the show, including the Collazo Show podcast, the audio version of the show. You can hear anywhere. You can listen to a podcast. So a friend of ours, shout out to our buddy Nelson Garcia, lives out in Germany. He said, Collazo, mira, I love all this Spotify stuff, but I'm an Apple podcast guy. I said, no problem, bro. So I sent him the link, and he listens to us faithfully every episode. Our buddy Nelson out in Alemania, representing for the Collazo Show community who listens to us as the podcast. Later on the show, we're going to have some live updates. My California correspondent, fam, they're literally debating right now in the wee hours on the East Coast. They're having the California gubernatorial candidates are debating in front of a group of Latino leaders. So I got a couple people inside the building giving us some live real-time reaction. I'll give you some feedback what's happening in California, que fracaso. Of course, we got to the West Coast has been the focal point this week. Karol G's Coachella takeover, which speaks to a lot of important lessons I wanted to touch on. But first, fam, well, I guess it was about time that the Catholics were going to get a shot, was going to hear from this guy. I don't think you've been under a rock. Certainly if you're not watching the Collazo Show, but I think you all saw the kind of attacks that the papacy and the Catholic Church, the Catholic faith, and the Christian community, and especially in the United States, and really from a Catholic perspective around the world, this is just unprecedented. Well, I guess you really have to go to the Avignon papacy 1,300 years ago, where you had the Pope literally threatened to even get killed, because the Pope 1,300 years ago got killed by our Pentagon. First, the Pentagon brought in the Vatican representative to the United States to basically threaten the Pope, stay out of our politics, with his very strong views, about everything we're doing, but particularly our foreign policy, this war in Iran, and the treatment of shameful treatment of immigrants. We're going to talk about more in a second. Followed by Trump insulting our dear Pope Leo after his response to those attacks on social media. Just an incredibly, just bonkers screed social media post, and then followed by an image of Trump, cosplaying as God, literally. Very golden calf vibes for you biblical scholars. From a historical perspective, this is just like so unprecedented, so shocking, but not really. Because on some level, it's just a matter of time. In the case of the Catholic community, in case of the evangelical, Christian community, literally, Catholics are about 20% of the country. Christians are pretty much the majority of the country. Todo a la basura with these multiple insults to some of the most precious values that we hold in the Catholic and Christian community. No false gods. It's literally the first commandment, fam. And it's really the first two, because the second one is that don't defame my name by being false. So, he hit the double play there in his behavior the last few weeks. And, it's been very interesting to see the reaction across the political spectrum within the Latino Catholic community. And Catholics across the board are just insulted, humiliated, just, aghast at what this is everything we're against, and really just spitting on who we are as people. But my reaction as a proud Puerto Rican Catholic is a little different, because My thing is, what did you expect was going to happen? He started, and I go back to this. The seminal moment, probably the biggest pivot point in political history in our country. I guess 9/11 still might be number one because we've never really been the same after that. But in terms of like political actors doing things, moments, and I'm going to keep saying this, fam, because you got to own this. We got to own this as Americans. This is what went down. 2015, my man comes down the stairs and blames all of our problems, not on the economic, the policies that since Reagan and Republicans have largely led, and Democrats have either, co-signed enough or just not have the guts to stand up to the Republicans enough, that led to this increased income inequality is putting a strain on everybody across the class spectrum. So even middle class, upper middle class people are feeling they're living paycheck to paycheck, even though they got a couple of grand coming in every year. No, has nothing to do with, that's not your problem. The problem is those dirty, criminal Mexicans. And at that moment, Muslims too, and Latinos too. And at that moment, as a society, we lowered our standards and said, you know what? We're not going to just banish him from the political spectrum or from the political scene. We're going to tolerate him. We're going to, put him on TV because he gets ratings, because it's entertaining, because he's a celebrity, because nobody really took him politically seriously. And there wasn't enough respect, frankly, for Latinos in this country, including by other Latinos at that moment, to say, hell no. Sorry, God. So this is what happens. So eventually, when you let the bully go around, this is what bullies do, fam. And this is one of the saddest things. The reason I don't start my introduction by saying this is the political show. Well, obviously, that's a big part of the show. But the ultimate lesson of the Collazo show is we need to really understand the power we have as leaders in leadership. Because, and this is what I tell my sons all the time, unfortunately, familia, most of us in our day-to-day life are followers. And so when nobody's, the real powerful people that say that about Trump, well, what am I going to say? And this is because of that lack of leadership again and again and again and again. Now it's just a matter of time, that we're gonna be, the bully's gonna pick on us. Because he started by picking on 20% of the population from the beginning. And the rest of us didn't stand up enough for the people of Mexican descent, Latinos, and immigrant communities. And look now what's happening. We'll talk about that in a second. So I'm not surprised. I guess my bigger question to the Catholic, thinking about this bully thing, this has been the saddest part of this whole situation, this whole Trump era, is that what a terrible leadership lesson we've taught the country and taught this generation that don't really remember the younger people. If you're under 30, you don't really remember politics before this clown. That the bully leadership style is what wins. Not because it should win, because we allowed it. Because what the bully does is they go around and pick on the weakest one. They pick on them because it's an easy one. It's not a challenge. And they're going to be able to, address their insecurities by picking on the weakest link in the schoolyard. And the rest of us, if we don't show leadership, even though we probably could kick the bully's ass, feel intimidated, feel insecure too. Maybe I should be a bully because I can feel good about myself picking on someone that I can pick on, or just don't have the guts and the leadership to stand up to the bully. What did Pope Leo say this week? I thought it was very instructive. He said, I ain't scared of Trump. I ain't scared of the United States government. And, he was threatened, fam. I mean, I looked it up. Nobody could find a record of the Pentagon calling the Vatican representative in for anything. Why would they ever interact? Why would the Vatican talk to the U.S. military? And Pope Leo said, I ain't scared. Not because he's standing behind an entourage of soldiers and weapons. No, because he walks with his truth. And he's a leader. And he's following the leadership of the God we worship and believe in the Catholic faith. Bullying wasn't Jesus' leadership style. He stood up for the most vulnerable. He himself was a brown Jewish refugee who was forced to be born in a barn like an animal because the powerful did not accept his family. Does that sound familiar to you, familia? Does that sound familiar to you about what's happening now? Man of the people, Jesus. He didn't stand behind an army. He didn't back down to the powerful. He stood up to the powerful. That's why they were threatened by him. Because it was his truth and his righteousness that they were scared of, not because he didn't need tanks and nukes. And when it really went down, when the shit went to the fan, he didn't stand behind an army. He didn't stand behind his crew. He didn't run. He didn't sell out. He sacrificed himself for the greater good. For our sins. That's leadership, fam. So I would say that, this is absolutely, is this a wake-up call for Catholics? Absolutely. And I've heard from a few of y'all. It's been very interesting. My more conservative Puerto Rican Puerto Rican Trump Catholic supporters. And there's been some good conversations, and I welcome that. That's good. And yeah, you should be outraged. Of course, we all should be. But this is really the bigger question, fam. And this is the question, I think, that really, to be honest with you, is the only thing that matters. And what are you going to do about it? Because, yeah, am I upset? Is there outrage? Absolutely. But this is what we should be outraged about. We have thousands, tens of thousands of innocent people, including hundreds, if not thousands, of children, families and children, innocent people, families, women, young women, children, like these children that are incarcerated currently in that Dilley Detention Center in Texas, that are literally being tortured, being treated worse than we would, that if you saw, and there's credible reports, members of Congress, there's multiple, if you don't, just look it up yourself, you don't believe me. There's multiple credible accounts of the treatment, the inhumane treatment that is happening in these concentration camps in this country, especially the young women, especially who are getting impregnated in some of these facilities, who are staying there months and months and months. There's people that are like, well, just deport me already. Yeah, I'll go. And they're kept there, including these children. And so my question to the Catholic community in particular, and anyone of good faith, anyone watching this, because look, we're all one fam, is the question really is, the outrage really needs to be for these kids. Because at the end of the day, the bully's going to try to bully us. That's going to happen. The question is, what are we going to do? Not just to stand up for ourselves as Catholics. Of course, we should do that. And stand up for our faith and our values. And look, at the end of the day, fam, yeah, do I wish we voted more progressively? And I think that's going to happen in the fall. We'll talk about that in a second, a political segment. I think, save for some sort of incredible steal of the election, I think Democrats will do very well. I think Latinos will vote 2/3 plus for the Democrats. I don't think that's really the issue. But really the issue is across the political spectrum, regardless of how you're going to vote in November, how you voted in the past. If you're a person of faith, you really have a heart. Forget even a religious part. If you really are about something, you need to do everything you can for these children. And, because right now it shouldn't be about anything other than we can't let these children get treated. If you saw it with your eyes, your own eyes, I see all the reporting. I got information. I'm a part of this community that's engaged in this issue, fam. If you saw with your own eyes how these children and families and young women and young people are getting treated in these facilities, if you saw animals being treated that way, you'd be totally disgusted and want those people thrown in prison for a long time. They're treating human beings like this. So it's really about living the lyrics, fam, as Catholics and Christians and people of God, what we need to do is understand that we have let the bully everyone, and now it was our turn. So now we're getting picked on. What are we going to do about it? Not just for ourselves, but these other children of God, who, by the way, probably are most all Catholic and Christian, and mostly Latinos. But that doesn't even matter. That doesn't even matter. What matters is how are we going to live the lyrics. What are we going to do right now to live out the faith and what Jesus taught us to do? And because, by the way, Pope Leo on this earth is leading the way and said, I ain't scared. And I'm going to continue to speak up for these children. I'm going to continue to speak up for the forgotten, because we cannot forget these kids. We cannot forget these families. What are we going to do about it, fam? Pope said he ain't scared. What are we scared of? That's really the question. Thank you very much for watching the Collazo Show. Please, again, subscribe and follow us on Substack, YouTube. Got some great interaction from the review I did of Melao. Much respect to Val Vega as she continues her incredible meteoric rise in the film world, and a lot of other people we're going to give shout outs to and support in the arts and in all their endeavors. So a lot of good stuff happening. Let's talk about California for a second. This Fracaso in California, for people who didn't see, Congressman and gubernatorial candidate, Democratic gubernatorial candidate, Eric Swalwell, has resigned, has dropped out of the governor's race, resigned in disgrace from Congress when it appeared pretty clear him and a Republican, Hispanic Republican Congressman from Texas, Tony Gonzalez, also had a similar scandalous allegations. So if people didn't see it, the congressman and gubernatorial candidate, several women have shared really just horrific details of alleged sexual assaults, rapes, and just some terrible behavior, sexual harassment, and to the point where it's just too much smoke. And many power players, the Democratic political world was really coalescing around Swalwell. We've been chronicling here on the Collazo Show. Okay, there's too many candidates. They have a jumbo primary, so we need at least one of the Democrats to be in the top two in June. And SEIU had a powerful union. SEIU endorsed Swalwell. The teachers union endorsed Swalwell. So it looked like that's where the puck was moving. And now we're sort of starting at square one. The top tier guy's gone. So there's literally a forum happening. I want to shout out. Let me get the name of the entity here. I want to shout out, as we're taping here, the California, what is this organization called? Nuestra Voz. The California Immigrant Policy Center is having a forum with all these candidates running for governor of California. So we admire a lot here on the Collazo. So journalist Jean Guerrero, Boricua, is moderating the discussion. And so I have a couple of spies, people that are, one's in the building, literally, one's on YouTube watching it. Let me give you some intel. They say, generally speaking, the crowd, particularly the Democratic candidates are being very critical of ICE, showing a lot of humanity, showing a lot of leadership and passion around these issues around ICE enforcement. They just don't understand why Tom Steyer, who's a very prominent president, but really more known for being like a Democratic donor, philanthropist, particularly in the environmental space and actually in youth engagement. He's leading the polls because he's got the most money to put ads out for the branding. California is just extremely expensive to run. That's why most of these candidates are struggling to get any attention. And, he's just not coming off like he's got a lot going for himself. And it's like, well, this guy's the main candidate. If people remember, this was supposed to be Katie Porter, the former congresswoman, the consumer advocate. She would go and have those great moments, social media moments in these House hearings, holding big business to account for their unscrupulous labor practices. Where she have her little board, she just isn't has proven to be as strong a political figure during this election. So she's sort of muddling there at the top tier, but not pulling away. I know a lot of us are trying to paying a lot of attention to, will any of the other minority candidates step into that top tier? To say former Attorney General Javier Becerra, people I think generally consider the stronger of the Latino candidates, frankly, is coming off strong, and people are wondering, could this be a moment for him to scratch into the top tier? You got Villaraigosa, Tony's Tony. Antonio obviously is a smooth cat, been around, got a great resume, but he's got a lot of skeletons in the closets, keep it real. And they're not in the closet anymore. They be out here. Everybody know them. They go to the parties. His skeletons out here, out in these streets. So it's tough. And he's and I think the bottom line with the two Latino guys, Villaraigosa and Thurman too. He's a young guy, but these two guys, look, they have the best resumes. All these people, clear. I mean, the mayors and speakers of state houses, everything, attorney generals. Secretary of Health and Human Services, on and on and on. But I think there's just too many of us, particularly the Latino community, from a generational perspective, just looking for different. These guys are old school, not in a bad way. They're not even that old, but just kind of old school. They're just traditional Democratic people. They've been around. They've been in the Democratic thing for a long time, and they're traditional Democrats. And people are looking for a different vision. They're looking really from a different brand. That's really kind of the bottom line. I think that's why they're struggling. It's not really who they are, the persona. Yeah, the money's a part of it, but Koya, they've been around. Don't people in California know these guys? They've been around 30 years in politics. I remember when they ran against each other for mayor in like 2000, 2002. They've been around for a minute. So we'll see. And there's some other candidates. We'll see how that goes. But so anyway, I think the bottom line is that this is going to be the end of the week. Is going to be this next week is going to be like a big, how would you say, turning point, because the next big debate that's going to be on TV out in California is next Wednesday. So it'll be a week or so from when you're watching this episode of the Collazo show. They have the candidates, the top 2-tier candidates have qualified for the debate. You have to poll a certain amount and have raised a certain amount of money. So the two Republicans, Hilton and Bianco, and the two top Democrats now that Swalwell's out the way, Steyer and Katie Porter, have qualified. So it remains to be seen if any of the diverse candidates or this other gentleman, the mayor of San Jose, Matt Mahan, whichever mixed things about, frankly. It remains to be seen if they'll qualify. So we'll know that by the end of the week. So if Becerra or any of these other characters can scratch their way onto the stage, they'd have another moment to make their case that they should be considered the top tier. Beyond that, it's going to be a real struggle. So I think real important 8-9 days in California politics with the governor's race. As for the situation with Swalwell, Gonzalez, or some other on both the Democratic and Republican side, House members they're looking to expel for some real shaky behavior. Hopefully this is a positive sign in that we're actually holding people to account on some level in our politics, and in this case, a bipartisan way. And, maybe there's hope that we're actually going to hold ourselves to some higher standards. And I think around the country, that's what people are looking for in their politics, some decency. And I keep saying it's not about party anymore. It's about ridding corruption. It's about people with some values. It's about people with some character. It's about people that are going to torture other people. It's about getting back to the basics here in a lot of ways. And I agree with that. And there's a lot to that sentiment. And that's why, whether it's the California governor's race, the Democratic field for the next go around, because the presidential horse race, fam, is going to start. I think election day is November 4th this year, November 5th or November 3rd. It's going to start before you know it. And, there's a lot of slick talkers, a lot of people with some impressive resumes, a lot of good people. But the question is going to be, people are looking for something different. And what are they going to provide that's going to make them distinct from the field, including maybe on the Republican side? Because who knows? Because at this point, unless you're that quarter of about 30% of the third of the country that's MAGA fight out, that Trump crew is a clown car. He tells you, he said, I like to be around dumbasses. He says it. So, I don't know if any of these people are going to feel it, even in a Republican primary. So we'll see. We'll see. I need a breath before we talk our Cultura segment, talk about Coachella and some other shout outs to some other artists I want to give y'all some updates on. Let's watch for a moment. I've been doing various types of podcasts over the years, fam, and I'm going to give you a couple best of clips. First one I'm going to give you features the iconic Latina journalist Mariana Hossa talking about how her and Suave Gonzalez, our great friend from Philadelphia, is on this clip, talking about how they met and collaborated on one of the most successful Latino podcast series of all times. And then we'll hear how I on some level, I identified a song that Bad Bunny was going to do on his Debí Tirar Más Fotos album months before it was released with the artists themselves. Check it out. Let's watch a couple best of the Collazo show, and I'll be right back talking about our Cultura segment.
My bad. She messed my hide up, right? because I was high on marijuana. So I was like, she just messed my heart up. And I just felt that every word that came out of her mouth, she was directing it at me. So when she was done, I asked her like, yo, what can I do? I'm doing life. I'm from New York, and she said, you could be my source, which I didn't even understand what source meant at the time. But then she said, you could be the voice for the voiceless. And that's what clicked.
So Maria,
That's what got me interested. And that's what ultimately made me change my way of thinking in my life.
Wow. I tell you a sick story. So in August, talking about how Bad Bunny's got his ear to the street, right? So in August, I take my family to the island, and we're at a restaurant in San Juan, in Condado, I think, eating. And so what I like to do when I go to Puerto Rico or I meet younger Puerto Ricans from the island, I like to ask them who are the new artists on the island, so I can try to keep up, So the mesero comes over, young guy, real, the la calle kind of guy. And I said, oh, ¿quién está en la calle de lo nuevo? ¿Quién está pegando en la calle? And I swear to God, man, he goes, de verdad, Davey Omar Courts. And he does a song called Verdad. How much more organic can it get?
Correcto.
Talk to me about.
Much respect to Marangeli Mejia Rabel, who's on that second part of that quote, who got to do the correcto cameo. Much respect to her. She runs the Philadelphia Latino Film and Cultural Festival, I believe. I might get the acronym a little off, but which is coming up in the next couple of months, and we'll have Marangeli on the show. She's kind of my Puerto Rican culture analyst on the show. She's on it from the island to the streets in Philly and everywhere in between. She knows her stuff with our culture and the up and coming artists, whether in the film world or music or dance or what have you. And so she's always been a great collaborator to the Collazo show. So let's talk about Karol G. Took over the desert out in California. I was amazed, all my friends that were out there. It's incredible. What a spectacle they have out there in the Coachella Valley every year. Karol G, first Latina to headline Coachella. She noted that this feels kind of like way overdue. It's been over 27 years, I think they've had this thing. First Latina. I think Bad Bunny was the first Latino a few years back. And, she did it right. Becky G, Weezing, Boricua, the reggaeton superstar, Cigarettes After Sex band, collaborated with Karol G during her epic show to close out the first week of Coachella. It was a big moment for our Salvis. Los Hermanos Flores performed, was also on the bill. Cumbia superstar guys, Ultra 54. That Latino kid from Jersey. I knew he was popping, but I didn't really know. And was really impressed by his performance. We got to have him on the Collazo show, and he did homenaje to Hector Lavoe. He did a salsa during his performance. Really, really hip guy, Ultra 54. Check him out. There was a lot of conversation around Karol G, the significance of this Latina immigrant, headlining kind of this, at this point, the most iconic American music festival going on. And there was a lot of conversation about, why she hasn't spoken up more about what's happening in the United States. Is she going to? And this was a quote from her on stage. Quote, Latinos have been struggling in this country lately. We stand for them. I'm proud this brings out the best in us. Unity, resilience, and strong spirit. We want everyone to feel welcome in our culture, our roots, our music. I want everyone to feel proud of where you come from. I tell you, boy, Latinos are incredibly nice about this whole situation, aren't we? We get treated like dog crap. We literally, tens of thousands of us are getting tortured every day. And all we do is want to learn everybody still. I tell you. I mean, I guess that's the right way God wants us to do it, but fam. Other people wouldn't do that. You know that. If it was on the other football, Ice boys be getting bucked all over the place. But that being, I'm not saying we should do that. Thank God we're the way we are. But coño, we're being really nice about this. What was interesting about, there was an interesting conversation that sort of leading up to it that I got looped into on Threads. And I'm not super big on Threads, but I like to follow what's going on there. And I want to shout out a Puerto Rican woman I've been following a lot on social media. I have a lot of respect for Victoria Jen Rodriguez, sort of business guru, coach, power Latina entrepreneur. She's the host of the Banking on Cultura podcast. And she threw out there something I noticed too. And I'm glad she put it out there so I could comment on it. Leading up to Coachella, Karol G was on the Who's Your Daddy podcast. I don't even know the Blanquita's name. I'm sorry, but of the youngish white women podcasters, she's the biggest, and it was big when Kamala Harris was on her show. If y'all remember, Una rubia flaca ella. And so I just know it's Call Your Daddy or Who's Your Daddy or whatever it is. And so she had back-to-back recently, Becky G and Karol G. And it got a lot of attention. It gave La Vaquita a lot of attention from Call Your Daddy and all that. And it was interesting because Victoria Jen Rodriguez commented like, what's this about? Why all of a sudden the Blanquita putting all these Latina superstars on her show? And her perspective was, wouldn't it be more empowering for the Latina community if Karol G and Becky and these people went on our shows, like the Latina content creators shows? There's plenty of Latinas doing great things in podcasting and social media. And I thought that was an interesting point. It was a very good point. And I commented that I found it interesting too. I noticed it, the back-to-back thing, because that show, I don't follow it super closely, but I don't see a lot of diverse women on the show. I mean, Kamala being on there was actually pretty significant, even just from a diverse perspective, forget her running president. And I commented that the Blanquita sees the numbers. And it's interesting. You're going to keep seeing this, that the mainstream new media world is going to find ways to engage the Latino community. I mean, look at Bad Bunny with the Super Bowl. The NFL is a very conservative organization. Look how they treated Colin Kaepernick and all that. But you want to be global. You want to look when it comes to marketing in our country for anything, you have to look when you're looking to grow any product you have. I don't care what it is. Guineo, Volvos, it doesn't matter what it is. Where's the growth market pretty much in anything in our country? Young people. Who's the driving force, the economic engine, the cultural spirit of our country? In the youth community. It's women of color that are educated, that are got it going on, that are progressing. That's it. And by the way, heavily Latina and African American. So it's no surprise. So whether it's Call Your Daddy or any of these other mainstream, traditionally very white spaces, you're going to start seeing them slowly bringing the Latinos for the market. And so the question is, going back to that leadership conversation, what are Latinos going to do? Are they going to just kind of fall in line with that and just try to be part of the mainstream? Or are they going to they're going to be like Bad Bunny and keep it real and say, no, we are the mainstream. So fascinating conversation. Hopefully we continue to Victoria Jen. If you're watching this, hopefully you'll see the clip. I'd love for you to come on the show. We keep having that conversation with other Latina and diverse women powerhouses. I want to shout out, speaking of Latina powerhouses, I want to shout out, Connie Garcia. Many of you probably don't know who Connie Garcia is. If you think about culture and music, because I know people, when they think about Puerto Rico, all the reggaeton stuff and right? But Connie Garcia is probably been, in this century, maybe there's bigger names, but probably been, in a lot of ways, really our biggest, most successful, most prolific Puerto Rican female music artist. She was on Objetivo Fama, like a Spanish language, singing competition show about 20 years ago. And ever since, she's made 10 albums, that quintessential Latin pop, ethereal, alt, kind of music style, folksy, she's just got a tremendous amount of charisma, just a real strong character, that woman, very politically active with progressive issues on the island, Latin America. She just came out on a new album, Puerta Abierta. This 11-track album largely explores autobiographical themes of resilience, self-discovery. She's got Juan Luis Guerra on it and a lot of interesting collaborators. So she's going to be on tour all year, basically, for the rest of the year. She's coming to Philly. I think it's her next to last show, late fall. Hopefully I'll get to see her. So support Connie Garcia. I also want to talk about the other end of the Puerto Rican music spectrum. Want to shout out my brother, Mario Collazo, a.k.a. Planetary, of the Philly hip-hop group Outer Space, along with his music partner, his music brother, Marcus, a.k.a. Crypto Warchild. It has been announced, I just got word earlier today, that it's been announced they're going to be honored this summer at this year's Philly Hip Hop for Hope, Hip Hop in the Park festival celebration, where they're going to honor hip hop members of the Philly hip hop community that have contributed a lot to our community. And my brother and Marcus have been in the hip hop music and hip hop culture for over 30 years. They're still producing music. Check out Outer Space in Planetary on social media. Check out my nephews. His sons are producing music. Element and my other nephews doing their thing, and he deserves it. And it's he's like me in a lot of ways, that we've been just grinding in our content game a long time, and it can be a lonely feeling, frankly. And you feel like keep talking to who's listening. And this is definitely a moment that my brother deserves, because he's been sharing his art for a long time. And check out his buddy Vinny Paz, very well-known guy in the hip-hop world, from Jedi Mind Tricks. They have a podcast, a YouTube show out, podcast you can check out, interview, check out the background. So much respect to Mario and Marcus. So and much respect to you all. Again, subscribe. One note, we're going to start having our series next week on the Collazo Show of Meet the Candidates. So I've got a whole group of Latino members of congressional candidates. I'm going to come on the show, share with you all their perspective. They're running for offices close to some obvious communities in Colorado and New Jersey and other places, and some real exotic ones, places you don't think of when you think of Latino politics, including my first guest in the series, which we'll announce very soon. She'll be on the show next week. I want to thank all of you. Continue to subscribe and support the Collazo Show, whether it's part of the Substack community, which was kind of like the first adopters of this version of our podcast journey here in 2026, at the Collazo Show on YouTube, or the Collazo Show podcast, which I love my audio files. Thank you all so much. As you're going around your day, think about, if the Pope ain't scared, why are we? And what are we going to do about that to overcome that fear? Because those children that I highlighted earlier, they deserve our best at this moment. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.